Persuasive influences the audience to a particular point of view or course of action. The Region 9 champion for Persuasive is Joshua Paul, who gives us the choice between an early retirement or a fulfilled life. Ladies and gentlemen, Living Big for Christ by Joshua Paul.
Picture it. You're leaning back in a comfortable reclining chair, with the wind softly blowing, the sun gently beaming down on you and lulling you into a peaceful state. As you peek up, a small teal wave crashes along the shoreline, producing a white face. The air is silent, other than the crow of an occasional seagull, and the cool, refreshing taste of a lemonade lingers in your mouth. But don't imagine the lemonade too much, because you might, if you're anything like me, get really thirsty. This scene, described in Pastor John Piper's sermon for the Passion Conference in 2000, was no imaginary paradise, but a genuine reality. For a couple who, according to the February 1998 edition of Reader's Digest, took early retirement for their jobs in the Northeast 5 years ago, when he was 59 and she was 51. Now they live in Punta Gorda, Florida, where they cruise on their 30-foot trawler, play softball, and collect shells. Shells. I'll ask you to keep that in mind as you consider, what if, instead of taking early retirement to collect shells, this couple did what Ruby Eliason and Laura Edwards did. 2 women, one single and one widowed, one of them pushing 80 years old, working as medical missionaries in a remote village in Cameroon. One day, they were driving on a steep road, the brakes went out, they couldn't stop the car. They drove off a cliff and died instantly. So I ask you, which one of these people wasted their lives? 2 women, devoted to making Christ known, risking their lives for his sake, long after many of their counterparts are enjoying a comfortable retirement. Or the couple who, right before they meet their maker to give an account for what they've done, are collecting shells. Well, Pastor John Piper answers that question by saying that is a tragedy, I quote. At the end of their one precious life, they waste it on trivialities. And that is why I wanted to write this speech, to encourage others to live big for Christ, by addressing the problem, the solution, and the result. First, what's the problem? It's the disease of a wasted life. According to the Outreach magazine, the average person spends 9.1 years watching TV, and another 2 years watching commercials. Commercials. It takes a human being 2 years to learn how to speak, jump, and walk. J.R.R. Tolkien took less than 2 years to write the entire book, The Hobbit. And it takes the average American 2 years to figure out that Geico can save them 15% or more. We have a problem. The global advocacy ministry, the Traveling Team, reported that the total income of all church members in the world amounts to $53 trillion. But only 1.5% of that, $896 billion, is given to Christian causes. Which is about how much we spend in America alone on Christmas. And with that type of cookie money, we shouldn't wonder why Santa's so fat. Now, by no means am I saying it's wrong to relax, flip on the TV, and give gifts on Christmas. But the problem, well, I think the problem is best illustrated with a story from John Piper's book, Don't Waste Your Life. A story from John Piper's father, Bill Piper. You see, for a few years, an elderly gentleman had been going to Bill Piper's church. But unfortunately, this older man had not accepted Christ. One service, he got up from his hard, firm wooden pew, and with his legs shaking, slowly made his way down the middle of the aisle toward the front. Presumably after a few minutes, he reached the base of the pulpit, lifted up his hand, and felt Bill Piper's firm and caring hand reach down and grab his arm. Most likely in a quiet voice, barely able to hear his own voice, this elderly gentleman confessed his sins, believed in Christ, and became a follower of Jesus. But just then his vision started to become blurry, as water filled his eyes. Considering the wasted life that he's lived, focusing on trivialities, he screamed out with tears streaming down his face, "I've wasted it! I've wasted it!" Just like the early retirees collecting shells on the beach. Live big for Christ. It reminds me of the famous and very well-accomplished quarterback Tom Brady. At this point, he has enough Super Bowl rings to fill one entire hand, and 2 fingers on his other hand. I can't afford to do that with onion rings. And yet, even with all that, he dropped the charades and with concern in his eyes, asked the interviewer for a 60 Minutes interview in 2003, "Why do I have 3 Super Bowl rings and I still think there's something greater out there?" He's running as fast as he can toward fame and notoriety, but he's just running on a simple treadmill that isn't taking him anywhere. He's stagnant, collecting shells. As C.S. Lewis writes in his book, The Screwtape Letters, writing from the perspective of a demon, all extremes, except extreme devotion to the enemy, Christ, are to be encouraged. How do you practically live big for Christ? Well, Pastor Piper implores us to explode the myth of safety and live to prove that he is more precious than life. First, explode the myth of safety. There are billion-dollar industries designed to make you feel safe, comfortable, and happy. But safety is a myth. At any moment, our lives could end. In the words of singer Ben Rector, maybe we should always live like the world is going to end. If your life was going to end tomorrow morning, what would you do? Call your family? Speak to an unbelieving friend? Ask me to stop giving this speech? My pastor recently told a story from Tim Keller's book, On Death, about 2 women who wanted to become full-time missionaries. Their parents advised them to stick with the safety of a master's degree. And I love how these 2 women's pastor responded to their parents' concern. "We're all on this little ball of rock called Earth, and we're spinning through space at 1,000,000 miles per hour. Someday, a trapdoor is going to open under every single one of us, and we will fall through it. And either there will be millions and millions of miles of nothing, or else there will be the everlasting arms of God." And you want them to get a master's degree, to give them a little security. We are not safe. Every second is a gift, and we can live it big for Christ. Secondly, live to prove that he is more precious than life. One of the most practical ways that we can sacrifice for the Lord is through a use of money. There's a reason 15% of Jesus' teachings are about how we use our money. And that reality convicted me to ask, do I use my money to generously give with a joyful heart? And then I remembered I don't have any money. Pastor Piper's quote stood out to me. "The world is not impressed when Christians get rich and say thanks to God. They are impressed when God is so satisfying to us that we give our riches away for Christ's sake and count it gain." I've recently been inspired by Dietrich Bonhoeffer's incredible devotion to Christ as I've worked my way through his book, The Cost of Discipleship. His words, penned on the page, ring in my head. When Christ calls a man, he bids him come and die. Forsaking all else, we follow our King. So what's the result of a life that's fully devoted to Christ? Well, I recently experienced this last August when I took a month-long trip to India, which recently entered the top 10 worst nations for being a Christian. One day, while we were visiting with a couple who run a church and a Bible study in a rural area, we went on a drive. And it started out normal, except for the occasional monkey crossing the road. But then we turned onto an assortment of rocks that was labeled a road. And for the next 8 minutes, I saw nothing but trash and debris on the side of the road. Until we arrived in a village unlike anything I'd ever seen. I saw kids playing in the mud with no shoes and torn beaten clothes. And yet when we stepped out of that car, they looked at us with big, hope lies in small, tender, innocent faces. We slowly inched our way into one of their closet-sized houses with a clear tarp as the roof and one light bulb, powered by illegally tapping into the city's mail rooms. As I sat there, crisscross applesauce on that dirt floor, I joined in singing praises to my God, shared my testimony, and saw the joy and hope that this couple is bringing to that village. They are not wasting their life, but joyfully living it big for Christ. Just a few hours before that trip, my family and I visited with a couple who run a large church planting organization in North India. While sharing stories of heartbreaking persecution over sambar and curry that has been stopped, looked at me directly in the eye and said, "Joshua, live big for Christ." So which do you choose? The life of full devotion to Christ in a remote village in Cameroon, or the life of early retirement on a beach collecting checks?
Hello, I'm reaching out with so mic quality to thank you for watching the Showcase of Awesomeness and to thank Joshua for sending in this video clip, but mostly to thank him for showing such sincere support for this project. It really means a lot to me. Keep an eye out for the next episode of the Showcase of Awesomeness coming out very soon. Toodles!